Hello, hello. Welcome to the third public live stream. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to build a website from scratch. So basically, really with nothing in preparation. And yeah, I hope it works out as I planned it. Thank you very much for watching. Let's just get started. So when you have a look at our website, the way that you would normally probably get started when you never worked with Kirby so far is to go on a try page, and there you would download our starter kit. So that's basically our demo installation, where we have all kinds of content prepared, all kinds of nice images, a bit of a simple blog setup, and everything is configured for you to just click around, whatever, experiment with the features that Kirby offer and see if it fits or not. I'm not going to use that today. I'm going to use the second starting point that we offer, which we call the plain kit. And you can find our plain kit in our GitHub organization. So it's called getkirby/plainkit on GitHub. And the plain kit offers what it basically says. So it offers almost nothing. So it offers a very, very basic boilerplate for you to get started. I already downloaded this and I installed it here on my machine. I called it demo folder. And this is how it looks like. So it just gives you some basic folders. I'm going to walk through them in a second. And it follows our philosophy that with Kirby you start very simple, and from there on you build whatever you need for your project. So we don't offer a lot of stuff up front and then you remove features, but it's more like, we see Kirby more like a Lego brick set, where you take the bricks that you need for your project and you add them step by step until you reached whatever you want to build. So let me take you through the folders that we have in this plain kit. Kirby is a file-based system, as you probably already read, and that means that there's no database. When you download this, you can instantly get started creating content without setting up a database server. And that means that all the data that we have for a website comes from the content folder, and every page that is being created in Kirby is located in a content folder with a subfolder and the text file in that subfolder. So that's the content, and we are going to see that quite a lot in the next few minutes. The next folder that you see here is the Kirby folder, and the Kirby folder is the application itself. So it's everything that Kirby sets up, and you shouldn't really touch that. It's more like something that you should just leave alone and don't worry about it. Whenever you update Kirby though, so when there's a new version out, you can replace that folder, delete the old one, get the new one from the update, unzip it and take it there, and then your system is updated and ready to go again. The media folder, I'm going to talk about that in a minute again. It has all kinds of files that you will see later. But more importantly, the site folder is where you're working when you build a website, because that has your templates, some configuration files, it has the accounts for your interface, and a few other things. And we are going to work mostly in the site folder and also in the content folder. A word about the local dev environment that I'm using. So I'm using a Valid, Laravel Valid, which is quite cool to get up and running with a PHP and a server. What we mostly recommend if you get started with Kirby is MEMP or XAMPP, depending on if you're on Windows or on Mac OS. We recommend those because they mostly behave like a normal application, so they are super easy to install and you get started without knowing much about how to set up PHP or a server or anything like that. As I said, I use Valid, and I already put that demo folder in here, so it's already ready to go, and I can open it up in my browser, and it would probably look the same in your situation. And as you can see, it has really nothing. It just shows the title of the current page, of the home page. There's no CSS involved, there's no HTML there. It's really basic. And when I start a new project, I always start with the content. So I try to build a basic structure of my website, build basic pages that I need, add some maybe existing content or put in some placeholder content to get working with before I create templates. And this is what we are going to do now as well. So as I said before, every folder, every subfolder in our content folder is making its own page. So when I want to create a new page, I can do that by creating a new folder, and then I put a text file in there. And opening that text file in any kind of editor, you can see how Kirby then stores data in those text files. So what you see here is a simple field, a simple title field, and that field is made up of the name of the field, then there's a colon, and then there's the content of the field. And the content of the field can be anything that is plain text. So it can be plain text, it can be Markdown, it can be HTML, it can be JSON, it can be whatever you can express as plain text in that field. And when we need more fields, we can add dashes below the field and then create a new field by giving it a name, adding a colon, adding some more content. So in this case, let's say we need a text field. And for this little demo, I'm going to pretend that we are building an agency website. So we are a nice agency. This is the text about our agency. And with this text field, I can now add more fields if needed. So those fields are not limited, and there is no fixed structure that you have to follow in order to name your fields. Whatever kind of field you have in mind that you would need for your content can be used here, can be added here at any time. And that is kind of the flexibility of the system itself, that fields can always come later. They are very easy to create, and you should really think in terms of how to structure your content into little tiny pieces to break down your text or whatever you have. So for example, if you find out at some point that you need a specific intro text, you could add an intro field. Maybe you want a particular heading field additionally to that. Any kind of field that you come up with later can be added here. So that's the basic foundation how to add content to Kirby. And now we can move on from here and add more pages by duplicating that. Maybe add a contact page, change the content in here, add some email address. Now with this new page, again, we have the option to add any additional fields that we need that are not the same as in the About page. So we don't have to stick to the fields that we've already created in other pages. We can totally make up our own new ones now. So for example, we could create a phone field, or maybe a street address field, or a city, something like fields that fit to the contact page now. They don't have to align with what we already have on the About page. So you can see with this method of adding folders and adding text files to them and adding those fields, we can create dummy content very, very quickly. And let's just move on and add a bit more stuff. So let's pretend we have a nice portfolio of awesome projects for our little agency. And as you can see with this is also a perfect way to do content architecture in front or before you really get started. Maybe you already have a client that had a website before and they have like existing content that you need to clean up, or that you need to reorganize together with them. You can sit down together with them with the folder structure and just start planning like this. We often did that in client projects where we did that in a workshop, started like this, and then just figured out what we had as content and what we could work with as in a initial workshop. And what's so great about this is it's totally universal, because it's just folders and text files, and you can take this and you can move it to Windows, you can move it to Linux, and it's always the same. You can zip it, you can send it around. It's quite simple. What we need for our little portfolio here is some exciting projects. So that would be the next step. And we can add nested pages by nesting those folders. Doing the same thing, opening those text files, adding some content for our projects, adding some more projects. And as all of this is in the file system, it's pretty fast to move around and add stuff here with your editor, especially when you get started with the development process. You don't have to spend a lot of time on setting this up. And if we have a look at our little site here in the browser, we can move to all of those pages already. So let's just go to our projects, and you can see the projects are there. So as soon as you create the folder, those pages become available. And they also become available when they are nested. And the folder names make up the URL for each page. And when you nest them, the URL is built in a nested way. So you have project/project A, project B, project C. If you want to create even deeper trees of content, you could do that as well, nest them even deeper. Depends on your project, if you want to keep it simple or shallow, or if you want to go very deep into your content structure. There's hardly any limitation to that. One file you might have also seen here is the site.txt, and that file is there for all kinds of global content that you have for your site. So typically this would contain the title of the page of the entire site. So everything that's not specific to a page but could appear on any page goes in here. So that can be the title for the site, as I just entered. It could be a Twitter account or an Instagram account that you might want to link to in the footer. It could be a copyright notice that might be added to the footer of every page. Just stuff that you want to keep universally accessible can go into the site.txt. And with this, we are pretty much done with the foundation, so we can take this now and work on this. One more word about the arrow folder and the home folder. So those are the folders, as I said before, that Kirby expects to have. And the arrow folder is kind of interesting because that will be used whenever you enter URL that does not exist. So if you type in something that doesn't work, Kirby will fall back to the arrow folder and then take the data from that arrow folder. So you can then create a title in there, maybe have some helpful text in there, how to get away from the error again or how to solve that. But as I said, this is pretty much what you need to get started. Afterwards, you can start with your templates. So that would be the next step. And to work on the templates, we move to the site folder. And in the site folder, there's a templates folder. And inside the templates folder, the only thing that comes with the plain kit is the default.php. So that's the template that will be loaded if Kirby doesn't find anything more specific. It will always fall back to the default.php. And so it's the perfect place to start with when you start a new project. I'm removing everything that's in here. So that's a PHP file. And in that PHP file, you can get started with just entering some text. And that whatever is in here will be thrown into the browser by Kirby. That's how you can think of it. Every page now loads this default PHP. So whatever we put in here is being loaded by every page. So when we move around, you can see Hello World appears on every page, not very dynamic. So the next step would be, how can we load the page specific data that we just added to our content folders in that template? So specifically, how can we create like a nice headline? And Kirby has an object in templates called page, which always references the current page. So if we are on projects, it takes the data from the projects folder. If we are on about, it takes the data from the about folder. And from there on, we can now access all the fields that we've added to the text file. So get started with the title. And now we see the same result that we had before. That's basically what the plain kit has. It takes the title and puts the title into a headline. And we can combine that now with more fields. So any field that we add to our text files can now be used in our templates by calling that field. You've probably seen that I entered title with an uppercase T, and now I'm entering it here with a lowercase t. That's a convention that I'm using mostly. So you could do this, but we prefer to write fields in lower cases, even though they are entered in upper cases or in any kind of case in the text files. So that's just a small detail here. But otherwise, you can access those fields. So let's say we want to access the intro field, you can do it like this, or the Twitter field if there's one, or the phone field on the contact page, etc., etc. So you can get access to all those fields. And then suddenly the text appears. What's cool is that those fields don't have to exist. So if there is a field that does not exist, Kirby won't break. So there's no big deal about this. It just doesn't give you any content. So you can make use of this to add fields later that might not exist yet, or to use fields that are available in some templates but not in other templates. And you can react on those and say, okay, I only want to show some certain parts of the HTML if that field is filled in or not, or if this field exists or not, which can be quite useful. It also works the other way around. So those fields that you use in the template don't have to exist in the text file, and you can also add more fields to the text file than you would need in your templates. You don't have to use them all. You can put extra fields in there and maybe use them later or never use them, whatever you prefer. So that's quite cool. So now we have some basic text and basic title, but of course this is not a real document now. So we need to convert this into a full HTML document. We don't need this, and we were going to move this into our body tag, and here we go. So this would be like a more correct HTML document, and this also gives us the perfect use case for our site.txt, because I already entered the title of the site there, and now I want to use it for my title tag in the head. And I can do that by using the site object, and from there on using the title field in there. It works exactly the same way as what we just saw from the page object. So I can access all the fields that are stored in the site.txt with calling them like this. So if there is a Twitter thingy in there, you can do it like this. Text, whatever you come up with in your site.txt, you can use it like this from the site object. If we have a look at that, our site title appears in the browser and everything works as expected. It's always the same on every page. So exactly what we wanted. Now we don't have a way to navigate around. So that would be the thing that we need to fix as a next step. Probably getting started with a logo first. And the designer didn't give us a logo yet, so we are going to reuse the site title again. Why not? And we want to make sure that the logo always links back to the homepage. And it's always a good idea not to add absolute URLs or manual hardwired URLs into your templates, because we have all kinds of methods that you can use to build URLs that are safe when you upload your site. So in this case, the site object also has a URL method, and that site URL method always refers to the homepage. no matter what happens. And we can use that in the logo to do exactly this. So now we have a wonderful little logo, and if we click on it, we get back to the home page. Well, that wasn't very impressive if we are already on the home page, but when we move to the projects page, we get back to the home page. And if you have a look at the source code, you can see that Kirby automatically creates an absolute URL for us here for the logo, which is really helpful when you upload your website to your server later, because then Kirby will again take care of creating or changing that URL for you, so it will then match the URL on your server and it will always fit and you don't have to worry about it. So that's quite important. As a next step, we need some kind of menu. And now we could go in here and create a manual menu, and all the pages that we created in our content folder, we could link to them manually because the links exist, or as I showed you before, but that's not very dynamic and not very easy to extend. So what we can do is we can take another side method called children and use that to create the menu for us. So we are using a for each loop in PHP. Site children gives us a collection of all the pages that we created in our content folder, all the main pages in our content folder. So taking a look at the content folder, site children will be all of those. They won't include those. It will only be the pages from the first level. And by doing this, we can now use each subpage in the same way as we would use our page object, and take the fields from there, use the URL method from there. Pages also have a URL method, so we automatically get full URLs to our pages. We get the title there, and the menu is created dynamically for us, which is of course a lot better than what we would normally do if you do this manually. That means the menu automatically is being extended when we add new folders. The titles change when we change the title in the text file. All of this is done for us. But you might have spotted an issue here, because we have pages in our navigation that we don't really want to have in our navigation, like the home page and the arrow page. And we also have a kind of a weird sorting here. So the sorting is alphabetically, it's taken from the file system, and it doesn't really match what we want to achieve for our agency. The projects are a lot more important than the about text, and especially as the contact page. So we somehow need to fix this. Let's fix it. Let's fix the sorting first, because that's quite easy. Sorting can be applied to all of your pages by prefixing the folders with numbers. So we add a project, number 1 to projects, then comes about page, then comes the contact page. So prefixing works like this. You put a number there, you put an underscore there, and then comes the rest of the folder name. And Kirby will pick up that sorting. So if we reload it, the sorting will be applied to our menu. And it will also take care of keeping the URLs nice and clean. So if you have a look at the URLs in the URL bar, the URLs still stay clean without the number, so the number is not included if you follow this syntax of number underscore folder name. But the sorting also has a secondary effect. It categorizes the types of pages. So now we have like 2 types of pages. We call those pages with a number listed pages, and we call those pages without a number unlisted pages. And we can use that in Kirby or in our templates to filter out pages that we want or that we don't want. So if we go back to our template and we chain another method here to our children, we can apply a filter to our children, basically by adding another method here. So this is something that you see a lot when you work with data in Kirby, is those chains of methods that you can combine with each other to achieve all kinds of things. For example, working with collections of pages. You can sort them, you can flip them, you can shuffle them, you can limit them, you can paginate them. And this is basically a shortcut to filter out all the unlisted pages. There is also an unlisted method which does the opposite, but we want the listed pages. And this does exactly what we want for our menu. It only includes those that have a sorting number prefixed, and now our menu is done, which is quite cool. So the menu is done. We can navigate around. Taking a look at the source code, we can see that the URLs are all correct. The URLs again will update as soon as you upload this via FTP, so you don't have to worry about the URLs being correct. When you move them around, they will be correct in the end. Nice, so we have a working website actually, thinking about it. We could easily extend this now with more fields, add more folders, as I said, trying a bit more around with the folder structure, but we also want to make it a bit more beautiful. So far it's really too plain. And now we would probably create a link to a style sheet as a next step. Link a CSS file. Kirby has a helper for that called CSS, which we recommend to use, again with the same background, that it takes care of creating a correct link to your CSS file. So if we link to a CSS file called index.css and we add it here, index.css, put in some CSS there. Kirby will then take care of creating that link for us. So it will create the link tag for us with the absolute URL to the index.css. What you put in here or how you organize your CSS is completely up to you. We don't have a fixed structure where you have to put your CSS files or your JavaScript files. Projects are most of the times very different, and you have your own front-end setup and your own build process maybe, or just your own conventions how you want to name your files or where you put your files. So that helper is really just a way to create those absolute URLs for us. For example, most of the times what I do is I use a assets folder, and inside I use a CSS folder, and I put my CSS files there. And then later in a project I would probably have a JS folder and a fonts folder and etc. Assets that I would need for my design for the websites. And I can simply adjust this to fit my own folder structure, so we don't want to influence you here. I'm going to write a bit of CSS, just keep it very simple, give you an idea how I get started. Maybe it's useful to some of you or not, I don't know. So I mostly start with the same philosophy to keep it really, really simple. Have some very simple reset rules, resetting the margin and the padding and the box sizing. Then I normally reset the link color, and I also use to reset the font family. What's up? Probably saved it in the wrong file. Yeah. So here we go. And then additionally, I would probably give the body a bit of margin to make it a bit more enjoyable, just as a first step. As I said, I really like to keep things simple, especially when I get started, just to visualize the content that I have, just to prototype kind of basic layout structures, and starting from there with my design or whatever I want to come up with. Going to lay out the header a bit so the menu stays on the left, putting a bit of design on the menu. So the menu links are set apart. I'm not going to go into details about the CSS here. It's mostly about Kirby in general, but yeah, just making it a bit more enjoyable. So, and with this, I would have a very simple little website that has everything as expected, except the projects page. That's like the more interesting part now of this little exercise. So I'm going to build a grid of projects for the projects page. That means we can't really reuse the default template for this projects page because there's only some text here and we need to be more specific about those projects and create a list for them. That means we need a second template. And this is where we have to have another look at the content folder and check out the file names of our text files. When I create new pages, most of the times I really just create the folder name and then take the folder name as the file name for the text file. So projects.txt, about.txt, just as a basic starting point. And because what's important to keep in mind is that Kirby will always have a look at that name of the text file and then try to load a template which is called the same way. So it would now try to load a projects.php template file for my projects. If it doesn't find that, it would fall back to the default.php. And we can make use of that and create a new template called projects.php. Open that up and then modify something in here just to demonstrate that it works. So now the projects PHP template is loaded for my projects page, but not for my about page, not for my contact page, not for my home page. So what I wanted to achieve in the first place is already working. So now I could go and create more HTML here for my projects grid. But you probably already saw like a big issue with this. My template is not very clean. I have the same template code in my projects PHP template that I have in my default PHP template. And whenever I want to change something, I have to change that now in multiple templates. That's not that bad with 2 templates, but just think about having 5 to 10 templates and then suddenly it really gets messy. So as a next step, I'm going to delete that again, and I have to clean up my default PHP template. That would be also the next step in my development process. And what we can do in Kirby is we can take whatever is being repeated in multiple templates and put that in a so-called snippet. So looking at my template, all of this code until the headline is going to be repeated in every page or in every template that I create. So I can cut that and I can create a snippets folder here, put a little file in there, and I normally call this header.php and put all the code that I just cut into the header.php. So now I've created a snippet for that header part here, and I can use that snippet now by using the snippet method and in the file name without .php to re-include that into my default .php template. Everything still works. Well, my project's template obviously not, but the rest still works. So the upper part of the template is still there. And I'm going to repeat that with the bottom part of the template. In this example, it seems a bit weird because there are only 2 closing elements, but think about a page that gets big, or a side project that gets a bit bigger, where you have a full footer with social buttons and maybe a secondary menu and all of this kind of stuff. All of this would go into here, and then you would have the code separate from all the other templates again, which of course makes a lot more sense. So we include it again, and now we can focus on the center part of the template, which is kind of cool. From here on, it makes a lot of sense to start duplicating that. And I normally try to build the default template in a way that I can reuse that always as a boilerplate for other templates. Sometimes it makes more sense to start with a template that is already more specific and copy that, but most of the times I just keep on duplicating the default template and start from there. So if I open the projects template now, I can now start to build my HTML for my projects. And what I want to do there is I want to create a list of projects. So we are going to have a list, an unordered list. And for my unordered list, I'm going to do something that is very similar to what we did. Come on, I can't type anymore. To what we did for the menu. So I'm going to go through all the children. This time not of the site, but this time from the current page. So the page method also has a children method, and from there on we can access all the subpages of that page, get that as a project variable. By the way, this variable can always be set to whatever you want to name it. This is just basic PHP, but to mention it here, you can give it a name that you find most useful. And then from there on we can do pretty much the same thing as we did in the menu. We link to the project, we use the title of the project for the list, and now we have a basic list of projects. And if I load this now, you can see it loads my projects that I created. Again, I can now go into the content folder and maybe create a fourth project, and that would be loaded then again, and the list would extend. Also here I could again say, okay, let's resort this. Maybe I need this to be the third one and this to be the second one. So we have a custom sorting here. I can add those prefixes. The sorting is being applied. And I can also say, okay, no, give me only the listed projects. And there could be unlisted projects that are accessible via URL, but not listed in the grid here that we will have in a second. Let's give that some basic styling. And we are going to use display grid for this, which is just so awesome. And I keep it simple for this demo. Going to create 3 columns that are equally wide, and I'm switching off the list style, and then we have a basic grid for our projects. It looks really sad though, because it doesn't have any images, so we kind of want to put some images in there. So now it gets a lot more exciting. Back to the content folder. How do we store images in Kirby? So images in Kirby are stored with the pages where they belong to. So for example, for our projects, I downloaded a couple images from Unsplash. And let's just pretend we are an agency that is really good at all kinds of stock photography, style stuff. So I'm going to copy a few of those images into our folder, and I don't really care about the size yet or about dimensions or anything else. I'm just putting them in there, and let's just pretend that those are our main images for our projects. And what I want to achieve now is that for every project, the main image is being loaded, or the first image is being loaded. And in Kirby, so all kinds of files that you somehow think belong to a page go into the page folder. We always try to make the folder structure as human readable or reusable as possible. So you get, so if you want to have additional PDFs in there, or spreadsheets, or CSS files, or something else that fits to the page, you just put it in there, and then you can reuse it or use them in your template to create galleries, to create download lists, all sorts of things. So in this case, what we are going to do is we're going to go back to our list, and in order to access those files, Kirby has a couple methods for pages that can be used to work with those files. So we can access a collection of all those files with project files. We can be more specific and say, let's only give me the images. And we can also say, only give me the first image of that project. And we can simply echo that image. And that would take the first image, sort it alphabetically again, and create an image tag for that. So that would be like the fastest way to include images. The images are huge. I just put them in there in their full size. So I'm going to fix that quickly via CSS to make it more visible what I'm doing here. So now the images are loaded. I'm going to give this a bit of a margin between the grid items to make it a bit more beautiful. So that's kind of cool. It already starts to look like a masonry layout, and we could now put some JavaScript on top of that and convert it into a full masonry layout. But what I want to achieve in this case is I want to crop them all, and I want them all to be the exact same size. And what we can do now is we can right from our templates manipulate those images that we work with. So we can use the crop function and say, okay, we want every image to be cropped into a box of 500 by 500 pixels. So there are multiple ways to take files from Kirby and manipulate them. So you can resize images, you can convert them to black and white, you can blur them, you can do all kinds of things. You can reduce the quality, you can make them smaller. And in this case, we are cropping them. And now let's have a look. That takes a while on the first run, especially if the images are pretty big. So Kirby takes those images, crops them automatically for us, caches the result. So the next time we run that, it's going to be really snappy. And there is no loss in there afterwards once the images are cropped. And what Kirby does is, if we have a look at the content file again, or the content files again, it doesn't take the originals and modifies them, so they are still the same dimensions that we had before, but it takes those originals, crops them, and this is where the media folder comes in, and puts them into the media folder and creates the same folder structure that we see in the content structure, and puts the images there. So here you can see the modified images, and they are loaded from there now. The media folder is a throwaway folder, so if we kill that and we open the site again, takes some time again. You could combine that with a lazy loading script later to make it a bit more efficient. And then you can see the media folder pops up, recreates the pages structure with the sub pages with the subfolders, and the images are in there again. So that's a nice way to prototype with images, putting the originals into the content folder. So you have like big source material, and from there on you can experiment with different cropping dimensions, with resizing options. Cropping can also be done not just in a square way, but also like by specifying the width and the height. You can say it crops from the top left, for example, and not from the center. So all of this can be done, and also all of this can be, you can experiment with this. That would be all we need to do for our portfolio. So now the portfolio is extendable very easily. Put more folders in there, put more images in there, let the grid grow, quite nicely. As a last step for our templates, we are going to create something that fits a bit better to each individual project. So the projects still look very sad, and that means we need a specific template for our projects. I'm going to duplicate that projects PHP template. I'm renaming it into project.php. And here's another note about loading templates. So you saw before that I didn't follow the same rule with the projects as I normally do. So I didn't call this project c.txt and project b.txt, but I called all of them project.txt. That means all of those projects share the same template, which makes a lot of sense for such repeating page types. Typically, the same would apply to blog articles, for example, or anything where you say, okay, it's the same type of page, they load the same type of template, so I'm going to use the same text file. At the same time, you don't have to stick to that. If you say, okay, project C and project A, they share the same template, but project B is more like a video project, you could totally go and say, okay, let's, oh my god, my computer is super slow. Let's call this video project.txt. And then from there on, it wouldn't share the same template as the other two. You could load a video project from there and make it more specific again. So you can use this to create art-directed blog posts, for example, or such specific project templates that load a different layout or embed a big video instead of a gallery or something like that. What we want to achieve for the project side is to create a nice little gallery. And we can reuse most of the code that is in the project overview here by renaming this gallery. And then instead of looping through the children of the current project, projects don't have children, they don't have subpages, we are going to use images to loop through every image. And then we use the image URL to link to the original image, and we can remove this, and then we can echo the original image. So now we would have a list of all the images displayed as a rather simple gallery. The gallery is going to be super huge again. I mean, this image I think has 4,000 pixels width, so it's way too big. So we can make use of our modifying methods again and say, okay, we don't want to crop each image because we want to retain the original dimensions, but we still need to cut down the size of those images. They are way too big in the original source, and we can use the resize method for that and specify a width, a maximum width that would be applied to each image. So let's say none of those images need to be bigger than 1,200 pixels width. And then if we do that, it loads again. But then once it's loaded, you see that the images are being resized. If I open them in a new tab, you see that the size is now reduced to 1,200 pixels. The dimensions are kept, so everything is still looking the same way, but we don't load the full-sized image. Again, you could convert them to black and white, all kinds of things that you could do with those images depending on what you want to achieve. Of course, you could also wrap this into any kind of gallery, JavaScript library thingy that does a swiping gallery, or you could create another grid out of it. That depends on your project. I don't want to be too specific here again, because in the end you need to find out what works for you and what doesn't. That's it for the front end. I mean, this is now a very basic site with some very basic content, some images, image resizing, all of this done in around 48 minutes. And now what I want to do as a next step is to care a bit about how to administrate that. So what we often see is that lots of people are totally happy with this, with the folder structure and this way of adding pages, adding images, etc. There's necessarily no step B, so you don't have to do anything else. You could just use Kirby like this and upload changes via FTP or put it into a Git repository, whatever rocks your boat. But in this case, or in many cases, you probably want some kind of interface for your editors or for yourself to have a nicer way to administrate your website. And this is where the Kirby panel comes into play. And it can be opened directly by going to /panel, and then for the first time you will see the installer. And I'm going to quickly fill this in. Come on, I can't type my own email address. And then I will be logged in, and we get the default setup in our interface. So now we see the interface, we see all our unlisted pages, we see our published pages. We can already use this to administrate our website. So if I start dragging pages around, you will see on the right that the sorting numbers are being adjusted. So all the things that we would normally do now manually in our folder system is done by the interface now. If we change the title or change the URL, if we change the URL, the folder name changes. If we change the title and the text file is being edited. So all of this is doing the same things. And what's important about this is that you can always use both ways, the system in both ways. So you can use the interface, you can keep on using the file system, and they work together quite nicely. If we click through the pages, you see that the default setup is very simple again. We have a simple text field here. We have subpages and files here optionally. So yeah, just very simple, plain setup again. And that's fine for the pages that we created. So the about page is kind of working that way. The contact is working that way, but the projects are not really working that way. Well, you could administrate them this way, but it looks a bit weird. So the flexibility of Kirby really comes to show when you are starting to set up the panel interface. And we are going to do this with the so-called blueprint files. So you have to think of blueprint files like the glue between what you did in the content files and what you're doing in the templates in the end. They are the configuration for your panel interface. Each page type can have its own layout, and that's the big difference to Kirby 2 especially. So in Kirby 3 you can customize all of what you're seeing here. And we've come up with a system that we call a sections system. They are basically building blocks of features that you can add or remove from each page type. So if you look at this setup here, there is a fields section here. It only has a text area so far, but it could have more fields. There is a pages section here, which is like administrating the subpages, and there is a files section here, which is administrating all those files in the content folder of the page. And we can now switch on or off those sections and combine them in different ways to achieve new things in the interface and adjust the interface. And we are going to do this for the projects page type. And again, this is referring to the same name that you used for the text file. So projects.txt, and then the blueprint is called projects.yaml. And this is written in YAML, and YAML is a rather simple data format, human readable data format, as if you want to call it like that. And you're going to see how it looks like in a second. So we're giving it a new title, it's called projects. And now we are going to add our own sections. So if you remove that for a second and I reload this, you will see that all the sections that were there, they disappear. And now we can set up our own section definitions. So what we want for our projects type is we want to administrate our projects in a more visual and more appealing way. We don't need the text area, we don't need the files administration because there are no files for projects, for like the main projects page. So we are creating a projects section of the type pages. And if I open that up again, you see it adds that page administration that we saw before, but it has that now on full screen. Nothing else is being included there. No text field anymore, no file administration anymore. It's really focusing on those projects. But the page management, or this list of pages, looks a bit sad. It's quite different to what we see here in the front end, and we have those nice pictures. It could be a bit cooler, to be honest. And especially for this kind of things, the pages section has an option called layout that we can apply here, and we can switch from list, what is currently applied, to cards. And now we get a nice overview of cards for our project. They load the pictures in a much bigger way. They can be sorted. Well, the lists can be sorted too, but it's more visual. It's more it's closer to what we see in the front end. And we also have an image option where we can adjust that the image should also always cover the full card to match more what we see in the front end. We can change the ratio of the cards or of the images within the cards. And then we get very close to what we see in the front end. And we get a nice image, or we get a nice project administration here that has a lot more in common with what we see in the front end. It's still an abstracted version. It's not like a WYSIWYG editor, but it's getting close to that. And this is very important for us because we always try to see data in a more abstracted way that is not attached to the design, but still lives independently from the design. So projects are covered. Again, what we are going to do next is to adjust the blueprint of each individual project, because again, this doesn't work that well. There's a huge text field. There's a files administration here, which is quite small compared to the huge gallery that we have on our project page. We don't have any subpages, so this feature here is kind of weird. So let's remove that and readjust that. So we create a project.yaml, call it project, and let's think about the sections that we need again. So what would be kind of cool would be to have a bigger gallery feature and have an additional section with a couple of meta fields. So that's what we are going to do. We create a gallery section first, and this time we are going to use the section type files. And if we do that, we get only the files administration now, so we have all the images here. If we switch it to the other projects, you can see them a bit better. So this is a project with a lot of images. Again, we have the same layout option, so we can switch to cards, we can change the image ratio, we can switch to cover. Well, maybe we don't want that, I don't know. So all kinds of those things that we can do now to make the gallery administration a lot more enjoyable in this case. And as a second step, we need some additional fields. So we create a content section called and use the fields type. And as fields, we might have a heading field, which is of type text, and then we have a text field, which is of type text area. Well, let's leave it like that. Let's just stay with like two simple fields. So we end up with the gallery administration up here, and then we have the fields down there. And now we can instantly start typing in the headline. It's project B, whatever. The fields, again, what do? They fill in our content files. So if I navigate to project B, to the text file, and open that up, you can see the heading field has been created, the text field has been created, the content of the heading field is being added here. So I'm going to fix the heading here, going to reload that to just show that it's working both ways. So you see the changes are now available in the panel as well. So we have all this working quite nicely. Still, the interface is not ideal. So we have like this huge gallery section here, which is cool, but then heading and text further down looks kind of weird. It would be kind of nice if we could split this into columns and have the gallery on the left and then maybe the content fields on the right. And we have a columns system or a layout system for this. So we can create columns, call them column left. And of course, all of this is documented in the on our website. So I'm showing you this now in a very brief way to give you an idea how those things work. But if you want to look up the field options, if you want to look up the way that columns are used to create those layouts, please go to the docs and have a further look at all the options, as well with the field types that we have. So we have lots and lots of different field types that you can use in those layouts to create all kinds of content. So now it's split in two columns. We have the gallery on the left, we have the text fields on the right, and we can start administrating our projects in a very nice visual way that works quite well with what we see in the front end and is quite enjoyable by the editors, hopefully. As a last thing for this live stream, I want to give you a few more examples how you can use that section system in the panel to create all sorts of page types. So we have this kitchen sink for us where we build all kinds of different setups for our panel, where you can demonstrate all various scenarios of layouts and combinations of sections. So in this case, for example, we have a more complex setup of fields with a split address here and then some longer text here with a visual editor. Then we have something like an events list. We have unpublished events and unlisted and published events. So you can customize those and they will instantly move around if you start changing the status. So they will move to the different lists. We have a simple blog setup, again with drafts and articles that could be in review, and then a list of articles. And if you click on an individual article, you see that those articles then have again a completely different setup of fields with a huge text field on the left and a date field, an author field, tags, etc. We have a restaurant menu as an example, where again those fields are used in a completely different way to offer a nice editing interface for a menu. We have a simple shop example with huge images for each individual product, with a list used for the unpublished products, where the focus shouldn't be that big on the image because there might not even be an image yet. And also like additional field types for each individual product. So there are lots and lots of things that you can do with those sections, combining those sections in all kinds of ways to get to the point where you feel like the editing interface is really enjoyable to use for your editors. That was a long one, but I managed to still keep it roughly at around 1 hour. I hope you enjoyed this as an introduction to Kirby, to all sorts of things that you can do. There is a lot more that you can do with templates, with images, with files, combining data. We didn't speak about how to get data from different pages into other templates. You can combine those in a very great way. And this leaves room for more videos, which will hopefully come up soon. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, for sticking around for so long. Have a great weekend and see you next time. Bye bye.